Is the SSL Fusion still worth it in 2024? I have wanted one of these since I saw its release in 2018, and I finally pulled the trigger on one. But now I have the question, is the SSL Fusion still worth it in 2024? Let's talk about it. Hey everyone, I'm Cole Caparoon. Thank you for stopping by for another video. Now, like I said, when I first saw this released, I wanted this thing so bad, and it just took me a long time to pull the trigger on it. There was a lot of things that were higher on the priority list. But a few months ago, I pulled the trigger on one and got one. I spent some time with it. I got to know it. I've done more than a handful of songs with it, both mixing and mastering. So today I want to give you a rundown of the SSL Fusion, walk you through its controls, let you know what it sounds like, but then I want to talk about, is this thing still worth it in 2024? There's been a lot of other units come out since this has come out, and I'm curious to see if it's still worth the money or if maybe we should go with something else. All right, so let's jump into it and take a listen to this box. Okay, so let's take a listen to the solid state Logic Fusion. I'm gonna use the same piece of music I used for my signature preamp model, and this has kind of become what I've used to test saturation. Now this is level matched. This is bypassed right now, but when I engage it, these are the exact same peak volume. Now, I've chosen peak volume for a very specific reason. I've done an entire video on that, and I will explain it in more detail later. After we listen to it, I'll walk you through the controls and let you hear the range of controls. Here we go. And in. Okay, now again, that is the exact same peak volume. So all that crazy jump in apparent volume, in LUFS, impact, and bottom and top end, and all the things that this is adding, it's the exact same peak volume. And the reason why we use peak volume is because when you're using a saturation box like this, literally, at least for me, I guess I don't want to speak for everyone, the reason I'm doing it is to get added level. So that way I can get a louder master with the exact same peak volume, because we obviously cannot go over a 0 dB peak volume. This is why I measure everything that has to do with saturation in peak level. And I did a whole video on that. I'll link it down below. So you have an input meter, input trim. This controls how much volume or level is feeding the whole box. We've got a high pass filter with off 30 Hertz, 40 Hertz, 50 Hertz. The vintage drive is where most of your saturation is coming from. You've got the amount of drive and the density of drive. Density is a little hard to describe, so I'm gonna play around with that control and let you hear it in a second. We've got the violet EQ, 2-band, low and high. On the low side, we've got a 30 Hertz, 50 Hertz, 70 Hertz, 90 Hertz. On the high side, we've got an 8K, 12K, 16K, 20K. On the high frequency compressor, now what's really cool about this high band and the high frequency compressor is you can really get, like I'm boosting way more top end than I would normally boost, but because this compressor is compressing everything above about 10K the way that I have it set, it just allows you to get a open, crispy, airy top end without it being too much. And so this is a really cool combination. You've got your threshold and your crossover. The crossover will compress everything above whatever frequency you have it set to. Then we get to stereo image. Space basically controls the amount of low end that is in the sides. So the lower the knob, the less low end is in the sides, and the higher the knob, the more low end is in the sides. The width control does exactly what you think it would do. Turn it up, makes everything wider. We've got an output trim here. This extra button right here is an additional transformer that when you engage it, it adds a little bit more saturation to the bottom end and low mids, while making the top end just a little bit more sparkly and a little bit have a little bit more sheen on it. We also have a hardware insert. There are connection points on the back for a hardware insert, so you can just turn that insert on and off. And I really like that you can place that insert pre-EQ with this button, because this is a signal chain that runs from this side to this side. So the idea that you could, maybe insert another EQ in here and use a combination of another hardware EQ and this Violet EQ, that would be amazing. You've also got a bypass button here. It's a global bypass and a giant LED meter. Now, one of the things that I like about this a whole bunch is that you can turn each section off independently. A lot of models in this segment do that, but I'm really pumped that this has it as well. So let me walk you through the range of controls. I'm just going to tweak everything while this music is playing to let you hear what the range of these controls is. That is what the SSL Fusion sounds like if you have not heard it yet. So after waiting, I guess, about 5 years to get one of these, I finally have it. I've had it for a few months. I've worked on a handful of songs with it. I've spent enough time with it, I think, to really wrap my head around it and get my opinion worked out. I find it to be a very cool box. Let's talk about the saturation side of it first, the vintage drive in this case. SSL saturation to me, I don't know if this is gonna make sense to you guys, but it's like a graininess that is very, very fine. SSL saturation is very fine grain as opposed to very big grain or very smooth grain or very creamy grain. The SSL saturation thing to me is just, it's very fine and very detail oriented saturation. And for certain kinds of songs and for certain kind of musics, I think that's great. I think the EQ sounds good. I think the widening is pretty cool. I think I probably prefer the crossover style widening of the SPL Big or of the Rupert Neve Design MBT. But those are different units than this one is. And this one has its own thing, its ability to take away low end or add low end from the sides. It's not the same as like a crossover or a high pass, but it does a similar sort of thing, and I find it just fine. Its mono compatibility is great. I have no issues there. The low end of the EQ it's very SSL. It's not super thick. It's not gooey. It's not incredibly thumpy. It is a very clean low end, just like the SSL thing is. The high pass filter is very clean, and it feels fairly subtle to me. It's definitely there. It obviously works, but it is a little on the subtle side. The additional transformer that you can push in, and it saturates the low end and gives the top end a little bit more sheen, I do really like. I find it very useful. So the SSL Fusion goes for $21.99. I'll put a link down below for you to go check it out, or if you want to pick one up. Those links go to Sweetwater, and thank you, Sweetwater, for sponsoring this video. Anytime you guys need any piece of musical gear, you can jump on any one of my videos and click on any one of the links that you see, and then once you're on the site, you can purchase anything that you need, and when you do that, it goes a long ways to help support this channel. So I really, really appreciate it. Thank you, Sweetwater, for sponsoring this video. Now, $21.99 is not a bad price for this. What's interesting is any one of these units on its own, any one of these sections, you know, the saturation or the EQ or the high frequency compressor or the stereo image, like individually, they are fine. But when you put them all together in a cohesive unit, I do think this box is a really good value. I think it sounds really good, and I do think it's a good value compared to the other options that are out there. Is it better than the other options? I can't say that. Is it worse than the other options? Should you go with some of the other options? I can't say that either. First of all, I'm kind of a saturation nut. I mean, I literally have my own signature preamp for the sake of using it on the mix bus and adding saturation to my mixes. Is my very first piece of signature gear. So it's like, this is the thing that I'm ultra passionate about. And it's very hard for me to say that you should get this over something else, or you should get something else instead of this. It's a very cool box. Maybe there needs to be a shootout in the future. Drop me a comment and let me know if you would like to see a shootout between this and a few of the other saturation-based bus processing units out there. But I do think it sounds really good. You can be the judge of it. I let you hear the full range of controls. And whether you liked it or didn't like it, or thought something else was better, or thought this was the greatest thing you've ever heard, I appreciate you watching. And I really hope that it helped you make an informed decision that ultimately will lead to you making better music, because that's what this is all about. Don't forget to hit the links in the description below. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.